Arrived home that night expecting an ordinary evening. The house was unusually quiet. No sounds of TV or music playing, not even Emily's typical keyboard clicks. Silence reigned instead. Dropping my keys onto the coffee table, I noticed her sitting on the couch with knees drawn to her chest, arms tightly embracing herself. Her face was pale and her eyes held an unfamiliar vacant gaze. "What's wrong?" I asked, removing my shoes. She didn't respond, just sat there, gazing blankly at nothing. My stomach knotted seeing Emily like this. Always sharp-tongued, full of opinions, Emily was usually quick with a comeback. This stillness was unusual. Approaching her, I saw a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. Her grip on it was so tight her knuckles turned white. "Emily?" My voice took on an edge. "What's happening?" She seemed to register my presence for the first time then. She silently handed the paper to me. My pulse quickened as I took it, my heart sinking when I saw the medical clinic letterhead. Scanning down the page, I stopped breathing. Positive. It was an STD test result. The world seemed to spin, the walls closing in around me. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the paper tightly. For a moment, I stood there, stunned, my mind refusing to comprehend the words before me. Emily. My wife? How? How on earth did this happen? A tempest brewed within me as I questioned her. She remained silent for a while, then I felt her hair being gently ruffled by my trembling hand. I I don't know," she stammered. Anger surged through me. "You don't know?" My voice rose, accusing and incredulous. "Emily, are you really going to sit there and tell me that you have no idea how you contracted a sexually transmitted disease?" Her lips trembled, but no words followed. In her eyes, I saw fear flit by. At that instant, she grasped the truth and didn't know how to make it appear differently. I took a step towards her, causing her to retreat into the couch. "Speak honestly?" I demanded. "Now." I found myself about to speak, then stopping myself. It was at that point I was struck like a freight train. The wedding. 2 weeks ago, she had gone to Chicago for her friend's wedding, just a weekend trip with a few college friends. She had sent me pictures, selfies with the bride, boomerangs of champagne toasts, blurry snaps of a crowded dance floor. Upon returning home, she seemed exhausted, slept for almost an entire day, and dismissed my inquiries about the trip with casual and evasive replies. And now this. I felt ill. "Chicago," I said coldly, causing her to flinch. I let out a cynical, humorless laugh. "That's where it happened, isn't it?" She denied hastily and desperately. I didn't stop talking. My voice was harsh, like a blade. She sealed her lips shut. I averted my gaze, rubbing my face as I attempted to halt my thoughts from whirling out of control. My wife, my wife. It was her who had orchestrated this. She had attended that wedding, deceived me, and now she was seated here, feigning ignorance about how this predicament unfolded. And then, as if she had found her footing, her expression transformed. Her shoulders straightened, her lips compressed into a hard line, and in the blink of an eye, she wasn't the frightened, quivering woman I had unexpectedly encountered. Instead, she became defensive. "I don't understand why you're acting this way," she retorted angrily. "This doesn't signify anything. The test could be erroneous. Or perhaps it was you who provided the sample." I found that amusing. A hollow, biting chuckle of disbelief echoed from me. "Have you lost your senses? I haven't touched anyone but you in years." She folded her arms. "Likewise, neither have I." I fixed my gaze on her, hoping for a crack, waiting for an admission. She remained seated, her chin held high with a hint of defiance, implying she thought she could trick me into believing an STD had suddenly manifested. My heart pounded in my throat, and all parts of me urged action: overturn the table, create a hole in the wall, or let out my rage somehow. However, I restrained myself. Instead, I tossed the paper onto the floor. "I'm getting tested," I said coldly, "and if I don't have it, you'll be exposed as a liar." She didn't respond. She simply looked away with a tight jaw. I departed, needing answers. So I drove directly to the clinic, my mind racing at breakneck speed. The anger was there, bubbling just under control, but beneath it lay something more potent. an emotion I hesitated to acknowledge, a bitter, ugly sensation that knotted in my chest. Betrayal. Emily was deceiving me, and I knew it. In her expression, I read the hesitation when she gave me the test result. What truly enraged me, what made my blood simmer, was how swiftly she shifted blame onto me, as though I was the one who had left or caused our marriage's downfall. My teeth clenched as I parked in the urgent care clinic lot. The soft hum of fluorescent lights filled the room when I checked in. The nurse barely acknowledged me, merely handing over the paperwork. With hands that seemed surprisingly steady given the tempest inside, I completed the forms. A brief test, a blood draw, and some uncomfortable queries from the doctor, then I was free. Results in a few days. I didn't require them to know the truth. Emily had been unfaithful. Sitting in the car, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my breaths heavy. I should have been enraged, prepared to return home and extract the truth from her. But instead, I felt only a chill. My body seemed to have exhausted its anger and was now functioning on fumes. I required indisputable evidence, not merely a medical examination, but an irrefutable proof, something she couldn't distort or manipulate. Since one thing I knew about Emily was that she wouldn't acknowledge her mistakes unless compelled to, and if she could lie directly to my face tonight, she was capable of much more. Driving home at a leisurely pace, I took the roundabout route in an attempt to clear my mind. By the time I parked in the driveway, the house lights were still on, indicating her presence. She was waiting for me. I entered the house, closing the door slowly. Emily remained on the couch, now with her arms folded and legs tucked under her, regarding me as if I were an unwelcome guest in my own home. "Well," she asked, her voice sharp and defensive. "Did you get tested?" Upon reaching the counter, I threw my keys down. "Yes." She nodded, as though this confirmed something. "Good." I released a long sigh, focusing on her. "Why won't you accept the truth?" I asked. Emily looked exasperated, rolling her eyes. She claimed she had already told me the truth, yet was puzzled about how this situation unfolded. "Skeptical," I remarked sarcastically. "So it's just a magical STD that suddenly appeared without cause." She shuffled uneasily, perhaps considering her options. "Maybe you carried it before we met and have merely been dishonest about it. Our relationship spans 7 years. Can you honestly believe this condition only surfaced now?" Her lips pressed tightly together. Recognizing her predicament, she responded defensively instead of confessing. "You're being incredibly paranoid right now," she retorted angrily. "I told you the truth. If you refuse to believe me, that's your issue." I sighed, a humorless chuckle escaping my lips. "If I may offer my opinion," she scowled, clearly uninterested. "Fine," I offered despite her lack of enthusiasm. "I suspect you attended that wedding and indulged in some indiscretions. Now you're attempting to deceive me about it." Her expression twisted with annoyance. "You're lying to me, aren't you?" I moved nearer. "You were unfaithful." "You aren't. Confess." "I didn't sleep with anyone but you, Angie," she exclaimed, rising abruptly. Her hands balled into fists by her sides, her breath shallow and rapid. I knew she was lying because Emily only yelled when caught. I studied her for a while, maintaining the tense quietude. Then, steadily, purposefully, I retrieved my phone. Wariness flashed in her eyes as they followed mine. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to discover who it was." Her complexion paled. "Gotcha." We unlocked my phone and accessed our phone bill records. Emily wasn't tech-savvy. She likely believed deleted messages or call logs were gone forever. But I had access to everything. The numbers, the timestamps, all of it. I scrolled through, searching for anything out of the ordinary, and then there, a number. For several nights over the past fortnight, at odd hours and occasionally in quick succession, an unknown number appeared on my screen. I tapped it, transferring it to my contacts. Emily remained rooted in place, her gaze fixed on me. "Who is this?" I inquired, displaying the screen. Her lips parted slightly. A fleeting emotion flitted across her face, guilt, fear, uncertainty. Yet, swiftly, she assumed a neutral expression. "I'm not sure," she lied. "You don't recognize voice calm?" I echoed, assuming it was spam. My eyes stayed on her as I deliberately hit the call button. The phone began to ring, and from another room within her house, another phone started to ring too. A muffled vibration echoed, a phone inside her home. A chill ran down my spine. I turned towards the sound, so did Emily, her eyes widening slightly. Before I could respond, she dashed past me, sprinting down the hallway. In that instant, I recognized who had been phoning her, with whom she'd been conversing late at night. They were present, I hadn't thought so. Emily was already halfway along the corridor, her bare feet echoing against the hardwood as she rushed towards our bedroom. I followed suit, adrenaline surging, my heart thumping fiercely, seeming to want to escape from my chest. She reached the door first, pulling it open forcefully, causing it to hit the wall. I was close behind her, my pulse deafening in my ears, and just as she lunged for the bed, I saw at her nightstand drawer slightly ajar. A phone. Another phone. I seized her wrist before she could grab it, pulling her back. She emitted a scream, struggling in my grasp, her other hand scratching at me, attempting to break free. However, I held on tight. This time, I wouldn't let go. Whose phone is that? My voice boomed across the room. Emily struggled in my grip. Let me go. Who? The intruder in our house. She struck me, hitting my shin, causing intense pain that didn't faze me. I released her arm momentarily to reach for the nightstand and grab the phone before she could. I clutched it as soon as I did, but she immediately tackled me. She crashed onto the floor, her nails biting into my arm, breathing heavily with rage in my ear. She fought viciously, like a wild animal, trying to take the phone from me, but I was stronger. I rolled on top of her, keeping her pinned. "Stop lying to me," I growled, my face mere inches from hers. For the first time, she froze. Her chest heaved rapidly beneath me, her eyes wide and filled with some emotion, fear perhaps, or just the realization that she was caught. She questioned me urgently, voice low and threatening. "Who is it?" she gasped, her breath hitching. "Nobody," I said, letting out a sharp exhale through my nose. Without breaking eye contact, I unlocked the phone, no password required. Foolish. The call history lay before me, with the latest call at the top, one I had just made identified merely by a number. However, it wasn't a name that caught my attention. Beneath it, among my frequent contacts, was a familiar name, Nick. Seeing it sent a chill through me. After all, Nick was our friend, and he had been present at the wedding in Chicago. His wife, Lauren, was one of Emily's dearest friends. I've seen him in my house more times than I can count. My knuckles white from grasping the phone so tightly, I feared it might shatter. I glanced sideways at Emily, her eyes scrutinizing me intently. She waited, watching for my response. Nick. The name echoed in my mind, barely audible. Emily remained silent. I managed to break free, standing up, my breaths shallow and irregular. The room seemed smaller, hotter the walls pressing in. Nick, the supposed friend. Gritting my teeth, I fixed my gaze on the phone in hand, my sight narrowing. The urge to hurl it, shatter it, ram my fist into the wall swelled. Yet I held back, taking deep, controlled breaths instead. I walked away from the bedroom without uttering a word, prompting Emily to follow. "Where are you going?" I didn't respond. Moving down the hallway, I heard her voice again. "Hey, hey, I'm talking to you." I continued walking. It was Jason who appeared in the kitchen doorway, me still with my back towards her. Slowing, I turned to face Emily standing in the hall, barefoot, hair disheveled, eyes blazing with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. She didn't apologize, she didn't cry, she didn't seem remorseful. Instead, she was enraged. It seemed as if I were the one who had caused harm, that I was the antagonist in her narrative. A soft chuckle escaped me, a murmur under my breath. "Impressive," I said, shaking my head slightly. "You don't seem to care at all, do you?" She crossed her arms defensively. "What do you want me to say, Jason?" I regarded her silently. "Are you suggesting I beg for forgiveness or cry?" "Not an option," she retorted, her laughter tinged with bitterness. I sighed heavily, rubbing my hand over my face. "Incredulous," I muttered. She nonchalantly shrugged. "Remember, I'm not the only one with skeletons in the closet." My eyes widened, and then I chuckled. You think I don't notice your glances at other women? She challenged, moving nearer. You think I haven't observed your flirting with waitresses, colleagues? Jason, you behave as if you're flawless, but there's a surprise you're not. I stared at her, stunned. Are you really trying to defend your infidelity by pointing out my actions? She sneered, offering a dismissive shrug and what could have been a smirk. Perhaps you should examine yourself before casting judgment, she added provocatively. Something within me shattered. I stepped forward deliberately, but Emily remained firm, her chin raised in defiance. You were unfaithful to me, I stated, my voice as hard as steel. Not just with anyone, but with our friend. With a man whose wife relies on your trust. A man who had been in our home, sat at our dinner table, smiled at me. I leaned closer, softening my tone. And you don't seem to regret it. For the briefest moment, she avoided my gaze, but that was enough. I straightened up, taking a slow breath. My hands were still now. My heartbeat, too. Because I had just reached a decision. Emily noticed the change swiftly. Her eyes narrowed. What? I looked her in the eye. You'll find out. Then I left, picked up my keys, and walked to Lauren. Lauren opened the door in an oversized sweater and leggings, her blonde hair in a messy bun. She seemed taken aback to see me there, likely my face mirroring controlled rage. Jason, she cocked her head, uncertainty flashing across her features. Hi, what's happening? I remained silent for a moment. Lauren. She looked puzzled. What's going on? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I inhaled slowly, clutching the door frame until my fingers throbbed. Is Nick at home? Lauren looked worried. No, he's still at work. Why so late? She asked. Because of this, I said, showing her Emily's second phone. Her face fell, and she stepped aside, inviting me in. The aroma of cinnamon candles greeted me as soon as I entered. Their home was immaculate, comfortable, a symbol of trust and long-term companionship. It made my stomach churn. Turning to her, I saw the worry etched on her features. Jason, you're alarming me. What's happening? I met her gaze, noticing the furrow between her brows and the way she clutched herself as if preparing for bad news. I disliked what I was about to reveal, but she deserved the truth. Without uttering a sound, I opened it, navigated to the call history, and passed it over to her. She accepted it cautiously, casting furtive glances at the screen. Her gaze darted towards the name at the top. Nick. A pallor descended on her face. For a moment, she stood motionless. Then gradually, she raised her eyes to mine. What's going on here? My throat constricted. This is another phone of Emily's. Her lips slightly parted as if she wished to speak, but found no words. I could see the puzzle pieces fitting together in her mind, the dreadful realization dawning upon her. Her hands shook around the device. Isn't this what I think it is? I cleared my throat, gritting my teeth. Emily underwent an STD test today, I said, speaking evenly. The test results came back positive. She drew in a sharp breath, taking a hesitant step backwards. No, I nodded solemnly. She tried to mislead me, deceive me, claimed ignorance about the situation. Checked our phone bill and found that number recurring, mostly at late hours, private calls. I gasped. I dialed it. The house phone started ringing. Lauren put a hand over her mouth, her breaths growing ragged. No, 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 no. She whispered, but already she was moving, pacing the room, clutching her sweater tightly as she shook her head vehemently. No, this isn't he wouldn't. They wouldn't. Her voice quivered. I remained silent. We both knew they would. She abruptly stopped pacing, standing in the middle of the living room, her back to me. Her body was trembling. Then slowly, she turned around. Her eyes were bloodshot but dry. No tears yet, only anger. Where is she? She demanded, her voice surprisingly calm. I exhaled. At home. Lauren gave a single nod. She swiftly headed for the front door, snatching her coat from its hook. Without hesitation, I followed her. If there was anything I yearned for more at this moment, it was to witness Emela's realm collapse. The journey home was quiet. Lauren, tense in the passenger seat, clutched her phone so hard I feared it might shatter. I could sense the fury emanating from her, and tragically, I shared that same sentiment. By the time we reached home, my fingers ached to fling the door open, to seize Emily and compel her to meet Lauren's gaze and acknowledge the truth. However, I didn't have to do it myself, because as soon as I unlocked the door, Lauren surged past me, entering like a tempest. Emily, her voice reverberated through the house, biting and toxic. For a fleeting instant, there was nothing but silence. Then footsteps. Emily emerged from the hallway, attired in pajamas, her hair gathered loosely in a messy bun. Upon spotting Lauren, she halted abruptly. Her countenance became blank. "Lauren," she asked tentatively, "why are you here?" Lauren cautiously advanced, her hands balling into fists at her sides. "I am aware of the situation." "What do you know?" Lauren chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Then, swiftly, she tossed Emily's disposable phone to the ground between them. "Pick it up," she ordered. Emily glanced at the phone and then back at Lauren. "I don't pick it up," Emily winced. For the first time since this began, I noticed a hint of fear in her face. She remained still. Lauren took another step forward, lowering her voice. "How long have you known?" Emily swallowed hard. "Lauren, how long have you known?" Emily hesitated, then closed her mouth. Lauren's breathing was shaky now, her entire body trembling with anger. She shook her head, releasing a shuddering laugh. "You were in my house," she hissed. "You smiled at me. You entertained my children. You allowed me to vent to you about him." Emily looked away. Lauren's tone turned deadly. "You'd like to discuss our issues, correct?" While emitting a tremulous breath, she revealed her distress. "You were betting my spouse without my knowledge." Upon hearing Emily's assertion, her shoulders stiffened, and I could discern the instant when she resolved to be confrontational. She folded her arms, tilted her head up. "You lack understanding," she retorted. Lauren broke into a manic, nearly deranged laughter upon that statement. Then, without warning, she lunged. I scarcely had time to respond before Lauren seized Emily's wrist and forced her against the wall. Emily gasped, her eyes widening. "You destroyed my family," Lauren spat angrily. "You breached my trust, and you haven't even the decency to feel remorseful about it." Emily wrestled in her grip. Lauren released her abruptly, shoving her away. Emily reeled, steadying herself against the wall, her face flushed with fury and humiliation. For a moment, there was silence. Then Lauren took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. She faced me again, eyes blazing. Emily hesitated as we headed towards Jason's office. Lauren seemed to catch this and gave a smirk. "You don't seem thrilled with that idea," she remarked. Emily's lips thinned into a tight line, but she remained silent. Lauren looked at me, prompting me. I nodded subtly, and as we left the house, Emily spoke for the first time. "Wait." Her voice was desperate. "Jason, please." I paused in the doorway, looking back at her. She appeared small now, vulnerable, pitiful. I met her gaze without expression. Then I turned away, and we drove off to confront Nick. The journey to Nick's office felt like the tranquility before a storm. The air was heavy with tension, an almost crushing silence hanging between Lauren and me. She didn't speak since we left home. She just sat there, tightly clutching her phone, making it creak audibly. I comprehended. She wasn't merely angry or betrayed. She was disintegrating, as was I. Upon arriving at the building, Lauren wasted no time. She exited the vehicle before I had fully parked, striding toward the entrance with determined steps, reminiscent of a woman on a crusade. I trailed behind, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Nick was employed in real estate and maintained an office in a stylish, contemporary building with oversized glass windows mirroring the city lights. Despite it being off hours, I was certain he remained within. He had messaged me earlier in the week lamenting late meetings, expressing his overwhelming workload. Occupied. Indeed. Or so I thought. Lauren forcefully swung open the door, and we entered the lobby. A young receptionist, barely of legal drinking age, lifted his gaze from his phone. "Hello? Can I assist you?" Lauren ignored him. "Where's Nick?" The boy appeared startled by her abruptness. "He's in his office, but he's with a client at the moment." She was already on the move. The receptionist murmured indistinctly behind us, but I paid no mind, matching Lauren's swift stride as she marched along the corridor, her heels echoing against the shiny floor. She was familiar with the destination. We had visited Nick's office on various occasions, barbecues, holiday celebrations, casual drop-ins, and yet this stroll felt distinctive. It wasn't merely approaching a man's office, it was facing his accountability. Lauren arrived at his door prior to us. She didn't knock or pause, she simply thrust it open. Nick was seated behind his desk, leaning back in his chair, phone clutched in hand. Upon noticing our presence, he looked up, taken aback, his eyebrows knitting as he recognized us. "Lauren," he glanced at me. "Jason?" "What the hell?" Lauren placed Emily's burner phone on his desk. The room fell silent. Nick fixed his gaze on the phone. Then, with deliberate slowness, he straightened up, his countenance transforming into something I couldn't quite decipher. He was aware. He knew precisely why we had come. Lauren folded her arms and stiffened her jaw. "Go on, say it." Nick's toss missed the mark. "Say what now?" Lauren sneered, a humorless chuckle escaping. "Don't play stupid with me. You know exactly what this is." She leaned across the desk, pressing her palms flat against it. "Say it," Nick sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Lauren, let's not have this conversation here, please." Lauren sneered in response. "Now you want privacy. Now, after months of secretive actions behind my back. After you slept with my best friend and came home as if nothing had happened." She shook her head. "No, Nick, you don't deserve privacy anymore." Nick rubbed his face, looking weary. It seemed he was the one in the wrong. I tightened my fists. "Do you feel any remorse?" I whispered. Nick glanced at me. For a moment, I thought I saw remorse or guilt in his eyes. However, just like Emily, he deflected instead. "This isn't entirely my fault," he replied. Lauren drew in a sharp breath. "Apologies." Nick leaned back, giving a casual shrug. "Obviously, I made a mistake. I understand that. Yet, let's not pretend our marriage was flawless, Lauren. For years, we've been growing apart, prioritizing the children over each other, pushing me away." Lauren slammed her hands on the desk with such force it made me startle. Nick seemed stunned, clearly angry. "Are you actually suggesting this is my fault?" Lauren hissed angrily. "You believe infidelity is acceptable because we've been distant." Nick ran a hand through his hair, appearing weary from explaining himself. "I'm merely stating it wasn't intentional." I sighed heavily, shaking my head. "Incredible," I remarked. Nick turned to me, eyes narrowing. "And you? You think Emily was the blameless victim in this mess? You believe she didn't gossip about you behind your back?" My heart pounded in my throat. Lauren tensed up. "What on earth does that imply?" Nick leaned closer, setting his elbows on the table. "It signifies your seemingly flawless friend was gossiping to me about how unhappy Jason made her. She said he was tedious, monotonous, and neglectful." My jaw tightened painfully. "And you know something else?" Nick faced me now. "She mentioned similar things about you, Lauren, about how preoccupied with motherhood you were, disregarding your husband. She expressed pity for me." Lauren's breath hitched. I noticed her hands shaking slightly, yet she stood her ground. Instead, she tilted her head, her voice calm yet threatening. "So you actually trusted her?" Nick sighed, ruffling his hair. "It wasn't about trusting her, Lauren. It was merely an occurrence." Lauren chuckled, a brief, sharp sound. "Ah, right. Just an occurrence." She nodded slowly, as if contemplating something. Then, unexpectedly, she reached into her bag and took out her phone. Nick furrowed his brow. Lauren disregarded him, instead focusing on her device before presenting the screen. "A photo." Nick's complexion paled. I moved nearer, looking over Lauren's shoulder. The image displayed was of him with Emily, together in a hotel room, his hand around her waist, her face hidden against his neck, and no wedding ring in sight. My stomach nodded. Nick released a shaky breath. "Where did you get this picture from?" Lauren's eyes flashed. "Emily isn't as intelligent as she believes herself to be." She smirked. "It appears she saved her photos to the cloud, and I happen to have access." Nick swallowed nervously. However, Lauren was oblivious to his words, already dialing a number and placing the phone on speaker. Nick grew paler. "Who are you contacting?" Lauren met his gaze. "My lawyer." Nick's eyes widened. "Wait, Lauren, let's discuss this." But she merely walked away, heading for the door as the call connected. I trailed after her without hesitation. As we departed from Nick's office with him flustered behind us, a revelation struck me. This situation was no longer about revenge. It had escalated into a full-blown conflict. Lauren and I exchanged no words as we exited the office. Words were unnecessary, as she immediately engaged her lawyer on the phone, detailing every aspect of Nick's infidelity, evidence, burner phone, and STD. Her tone was cool, calculated, reminiscent of a surgeon dissecting a body with a clinical precision and lack of emotion. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. I drove Lauren home, neither of us uttering a word, both ensconced in our own thoughts. Upon arriving at her residence, she let out a slow sigh, gazing at the darkened windows of her house. "My children are asleep inside," she whispered. I remained silent. She turned to me then, her face an enigma. "Jason." I met her eyes. "What will you do?" The question echoed between us, its meaning clear. Was I planning to divorce Emily? Was I intending to set everything ablaze like she might do? I sighed deeply, clutching the steering wheel tightly. "I'm not sure yet." Lauren examined me for a moment before nodding silently and exiting the car, heading towards her house without looking back. I remained seated for a long while after she left, merely staring at emptiness. Eventually, I started the car and drove home, where Emily awaited me. As soon as I entered, she was upon me, pacing the living room, her arms wrapped around herself, her face tight with an emotion that resembled guilt, though almost. "Jason," she whispered, hurrying towards me. "Wait." She seized my arm, her nails biting into my sleeve. "Please, just hear me out." I halted. Gradually, I turned to confront her. She looked disheveled. Her eyes were red, her hair a mess, her entire being trembling with barely concealed apprehension. She didn't feel remorseful guilt. It was regret from the outcome. She confessed, "I messed up." I stayed silent. "But Jason, you must understand, I never intended for this to occur." I grudgingly chuckled slowly. "Well, what about it?" she squeaked. I flinched at her words. "You tripped and landed on Nick's genitals," I retorted harshly. She recoiled. I sighed, shaking my head while rubbing my face. "Emily." Her breath hitched again. "I was lonely," she blurted out suddenly. "You've been so distant lately, so detached," and I laughed humorlessly. "No, you don't have the right to use that tactic with me," I retorted sharply, facing her completely, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "Do you want to know why I've been distant, Emily? Perhaps because I work 60-hour weeks to provide you with the life you desire. Maybe because every time I tried to communicate with you, you were engrossed in your phone, messaging someone else. Perhaps I assumed our relationship was stable, but unbeknownst to me, you were betraying my trust with my supposed friend. This revelation left you momentarily speechless." I let out a sharp breath. "You can't feign innocence here." You hesitated before responding. I acknowledge it. "Do you?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Because when I found out, you attempted to manipulate me, to blame me. Now, with Lauren aware and Nick's world crumbling, your remorse surfaces." Emily clenched her jaw. I felt fear. I sneered. "Yes, afraid of being exposed." There was silence. You didn't dispute it. That was the decisive moment. The last blow to our relationship. I stared at you for a while before taking a deep, measured breath. "I want a divorce." Emily's body stiffened. "Jason, I don't want to talk about it," I interrupted her. My voice remained calm and composed. "I've made up my mind. You've made your choice. Now you must deal with the consequences." She took in a sharp breath, her fists clenching at her sides. "Is that it?" she retorted angrily. 7 years of marriage vanished so swiftly. I suppressed a soft laugh. "The instant you chose Nick over me, 7 years of marriage were no more." Emily's eyes glimmered with fury and embarrassment, perhaps a mix of both. She sighed sharply, shaking her head. "You're wrong. I cocked my head. Am I? You'll come to regret this. I sneered. No, Emily. The only thing I truly regret is believing in you. I turned away, rushed down the hallway, entered our bedroom, and retrieved a duffel bag from the closet, stuffing in enough clothes for a few nights. I wouldn't be staying here. Not with her. Not anymore. As I fastened the bag, I heard Emily's voice from the doorway. Where are you going? I remained silent. I slung the bag over my shoulder, moved past her, and exited the door. I wasn't fleeing. I was simply preparing. For this was not the end. Far from it, I didn't seek refuge in a hotel or at a friend's place. Instead, I headed straight to Lauren's house. I couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was due to her being the sole individual who comprehensively grasped my predicament, or maybe I wasn't prepared to confront my thoughts on my own. Maybe I wanted insight into Nick's upcoming actions. As I parked in her driveway, I noticed the living room lights shimmering through the drapes. I paused for a moment before exiting the car and knocking on the door. It didn't take long for Lauren to respond. She appeared fatigued, her hair disheveled, her sweater askew, and she held an almost empty wine glass. Yet her eyes were keen, vigilant, strategic. Upon seeing me, she sighed. You left her. I acknowledged with a nod. Lauren drank more wine before stepping aside. Enter, she said. I stepped inside, and for a brief moment we remained silent. Then, unexpectedly, Lauren drained the rest of her wine and slammed the glass onto the counter. She told me that when Nick returned home, she stiffened, inquiring about what had occurred. She emitted a sharp, resentful laugh. He initially attempted to remain composed, as if calmness might quell me. However, upon learning I had already consulted a lawyer, he became visibly agitated. I furrowed my brow. What do you imply? Lauren faced me squarely, crossing her arms. He launched into a tirade about how I was overreacting, claiming that one mistake should not ruin everything. My lips twisted in a scornful smile. Then, remarkably, he presumptuously suggested I wasn't thinking rationally, that we should give ourselves some time to calm down. I let out a derisive laugh. Essentially, it seemed he believed he could manipulate you. Lauren cocked her head. Indeed. I rubbed my face, sighing. Goodness, he truly thought he could persuade his way out of this predicament? Lauren nodded gravely, and when he recognized that wasn't feasible, he started making threats against me. My head jerked up. What? She released a measured breath. Not literally, she clarified, but he began discussing the children. Discussing the potential fallout of a divorce. She suggested he might contest for full custody. She scoffed, implying his involvement as a father had been minimal at best, given his time spent with Emily. Her anger surged within her. He's attempting to intimidate you. Lauren's eyes sparkled. Let him make the attempt. I regarded her intently. She didn't shed tears or crumble. Instead, she was enraged. Frankly, I admired her for it. Leaning against the counter, I crossed my arms. So, what's your strategy? Lauren took a deep breath, raking her fingers through her hair. I meet with my lawyer tomorrow, aiming for full custody, the house, and every penny I'm entitled to. I grinned. Understood. She scrutinized me for a while. And what about you? What's your next step? I shrugged, releasing a long breath. A divorce isn't enough for me, Lauren. I seek retribution. A tranquil smile spread across her face. After her hushed whispers, a course of action that felt right emerged. That night, Lauren and I bypassed sleep, convening at her dining table instead. We were dissecting every possible piece of evidence against them. Nick had much to lose: his image, his business, his family. He cherished being the paragon, the loving father, the successful entrepreneur, the charismatic spouse. If society learned the truth, if his clients discovered the truth, it would devastate him. Emily, however, was on the verge of losing the tranquil life she had crafted. No more luxurious residence or husband indulging her whims. She stood to be left utterly alone. I sensed she wouldn't cope well with such a change. By the time dawn broke, Lauren and I had strategized a formidable tactic. She aimed at seizing everything. My mission was ensuring Emily emerged empty-handed. Nick, though, was about to confront the feeling of his entire existence crumbling before him. Adam found me entering the office of the town's premier divorce lawyer. I was no longer interested in seeking justice. It was about inflicting remembrance for their actions against me. Armed with my evidence bank statements, phone records, Emily's test results, I confronted Mark something, a polished man in his late 40s who exuded quiet confidence. After examining the documents, he leaned back, fingers steepled, and bluntly stated, "This is damning." I responded with a smirk. For her, he nodded. "With this evidence, you can strip her bare in the divorce proceedings. There's infidelity, reckless endangerment, and much more she can lose." Hearing this, I leaned forward eagerly. "That's my intention," I confirmed, and Mark, after a brief assessment, agreed. Discussing our plan. By midday, all moves were initiated. Divorce documents were being prepared, financial holdings scrutinized, and every secret Emily harbored was on the verge of exposure. Instead of returning home, I met with Lauren. Already 3 steps ahead, her lawyer had been relentless. Not only was she seeking full custody of the children, but she also demanded a comprehensive audit of all Nick's accounts. If he had hidden or misused a single penny from Emily, he was in trouble. We sat in her car parked outside Nick's workplace, sipping coffee and finalizing details. "Are you certain about this?" Lauren queried, looking at me across her cup. I was resolute. "Definitely," she grinned. "Wise decision." I pressed send on her phone, triggering immediate repercussions. Lauren composed an incriminating email containing photographs, call logs, and STD test results regarding Nick's affair with Emily. She sent it to his entire office, including every employee, partner, and client. The situation had spiraled into turmoil by the time we arrived near the office. Nick's reputation was being tarnished, deals were falling apart, employees were gossiping, and he remained unaware of the impending fallout. Lauren found satisfaction in reading the responses. "It seems Mr. Family Man is about to suffer significant financial losses." I relaxed, letting out a long breath. "That's good, but we are far from finished." That evening, I returned home feeling lighter than I had in days. Emily sat on the couch, visibly distressed and staring at her phone. Her eyes widened with shock as she looked up at me. "You," she whispered. I placed my keys on the counter. "Indeed, it's me." Her nostrils flared in response. "What's your part in this?" I cockily arched an eyebrow. "Which part are you referring to?" She clutched her phone tighter as Nick phoned me. "His business is crumbling, clients abandoning ship, workers irate. He suspects Lauren, but I know it's you." I chuckled. "Really? And exactly what did I do, Emily?" She shot up, red with fury now. "You betrayed us." I grinned widely. "Ah, my dear." I advanced, speaking softly. "You betrayed yourself the moment you slept with another man while I was around." Her breath caught. I drew nearer, whispering mockingly, "Did you truly believe you could cheat on me, on Lauren, and get away with it?" She gulped hard. I stepped back, still grinning. "Now you'll witness the ruin." Emily exploded. "You're nothing but a petty, vengeful brute." She shouted, pushing me. "Do you think this makes you a man, destroying my life, wrecking Nick's?" I stood unmoved, unblinking. I simply smiled back, infuriating her more. "Do you believe you've won?" She sneered, eyes flaring. "You think I'll simply stand by while you annihilate me?" I sighed, shaking my head. "Emily, it wasn't me who destroyed you. You did that all on your own. I'm merely ensuring you feel it." Her jaw tightened, and I thought her teeth might shatter. She was enraged, desperate. "Excellent, because this is only the start." Emily stalked the living room like a caged beast, her fists balling and unballing. She seethed with anger, not sorrow, not remorse, not even shame. Just rage because for the first time in her life, she had no power. And I was watching her burn. "You think you can tear my life asunder and leave unscathed?" She snapped, whirling to confront me. I let out a slow sigh, shaking my head. "Emily, I don't need to tear your life apart." I smirked. "You did that quite effectively on your own." Her eyes turned dark. "You will rue the day, Jason." I chuckled. Because that was hilarious. I'll regret divorcing a liar and a cheater. I arched an eyebrow. I highly doubt it. She moved nearer, her voice venomous. You'll come to regret treating me like this, making me appear foolish, making me lose everything. That's exactly what you've done to me. I tilted my head. Interesting. That's precisely what you did to me. Emily's breath became uneven. She was no longer trembling from fear, but from uncontrollable rage. For years, she had always been the one with the advantage, the one who manipulated situations, who lied so convincingly it seemed like truth. But now she found herself cornered, and she hated it. I turned to go towards the bedroom for my belongings. But before I could take 2 steps, Lauren is exploiting you. Emily spat out. I halted. Gradually, I looked back at her. Emily's lips curled into a malicious smile. What? You believe she genuinely cares about you? That you two are in cahoots? She chuckled, shaking her head. She's using you to bring down Nick. Once she's finished, she'll discard you much like she's discarding him now. I let out a breath through my nose, unaffected. So it seems I'm disposable. That seemed almost genuine. You could have tried that before I discovered you were a liar and a cheat. A pause. I squinted at her. What? Emily smiled slyly. Lauren, she knew about me and Nick before you did. I stared blankly at her. Emily shrugged nonchalantly, folding her arms. Take it as you will, but consider this. Why do you believe she wasn't shocked when you appeared at her house? Why do you think she was already prepared? Why do you think she just happened to have those messages and photos ready? My jaw tightened. She knew Jason. Emily continued, venom dripping from her voice. She didn't care about you until it suited her needs. I turned away, denying her the pleasure of a response. But her words, they left deep wounds. I barely slept that night. I dismissed it as Emily simply being manipulative and twisting facts, but a persistent doubt lingered. Could she have been correct? Had Lauren known about Nick and Emily before I shared the information? With my own betrayal clouding my judgment, had I failed to question anything? The following day, I drove to Lauren's house. She greeted me in sweatpants and a hoodie, holding coffee. Her eyebrows arched upon seeing me. You look terrible. I remained quiet, entering instead. Lauren furrowed her brow, placing her coffee down. Jason, what's wrong? I sighed, running my hand through my hair. I need you to answer truthfully a question I have. She nodded. All right. I met her gaze. Were you aware about Nick and Emily before I informed you? Lauren fell silent. Her entire figure stiffened. That is my response. I chuckled bitterly, shaking my head. Lauren sighed deeply, ruffling her hair. Jesus Christ, Jason. You knew I ended things right? For how many weeks? She hesitated. A few weeks, or more. I gaped at her in disbelief. And you didn't tell me? Her jaw tensed. I didn't have solid evidence. I had my doubts. I wasn't going to speak up until I was certain. I sneered. So you waited until I found out, until I confronted you with the facts. Lauren's eyes grew dark. Don't you think this was hard for me? She retorted angrily. Didn't you want to tell me? Didn't you loathe yourself for keeping it secret? I shook my head, taking a step back. You were supposed to be my friend, Lauren. Her expression twisted. And you were mine. I narrowed my eyes. What do you mean by that? She let out a sad laugh, shaking her head. Apparently, you can't see it, huh? See what? Lauren folded her arms defiantly. Jason, you weren't content with Emily for a long time. I clenched my jaw. You huffed sharply, shaking your head. Perhaps you didn't ask because you suspected all along. Maybe because a part of you wished not to know. This caused me to exhale sharply and rub my face. Jesus. Lauren, you're starting to sound like her. Her eyes flashed menacingly. You have no right. I let out a hollow laugh. What? You both are just so adept at rationalizing things when it suits you. Lauren shook her head, taking a step back. This isn't about me. This isn't about what I revealed or concealed from you. This is about you acknowledging that Emily wasn't the only one who deceived in your marriage. I stood frozen. Lauren's voice softened. You deceived yourself every single day. I hesitated, then closed my mouth. Because she wasn't wrong. I had known, somewhere deep down, in the subtle ways Emily stopped affectionate gestures, in her laughter that never seemed genuine for me, in making me feel like a task instead of a companion. I chose to overlook it. Due to acknowledging the fact being equivalent to admitting that my marriage had been lifeless far before Emily slept with Nick, I struggled to swallow, feeling my throat tighten as Lauren rubbed her temples. Listen, you're furious with me. All right. But don't present me as if I'm responsible for Emily cheating or the source of your pain. I let out a sharp breath. I merely need some space, Lauren. She nodded, her expression softening. I understand. As I moved towards the door, Lauren's voice halted me. Jason, I looked back, meeting her gaze. Don't allow them to triumph. I hesitated, then left. For the first time since this ordeal began, I wasn't certain who the true adversary was anymore. I drove aimlessly for hours. The burden of everything weighed heavily on me, compressing until I could scarcely breathe. Emily's infidelity, Lauren's deceit, Nick's lame alibis, it all merged into a tangle of falsehoods, manipulation, and incomplete truths. But the most agonizing aspect, year after year, I had deceived myself, masking problems with self-delusion, dismissing warning signals, and tolerating Emily treating me as an insignificant side note, all while persuading myself that such was simply the nature of marriage. I had convinced myself things would improve, that if I exerted more effort, gave more of myself, merely persevered, she would once again look at me with affection. In truth, I had clung to a lifeless corpse, unwilling to acknowledge its demise. Now I found myself liberated, not merely from Emily, but from the deceit. As I parked in a lot overlooking the city, the setting sun bathed everything in rich hues of orange and gold. The serene tranquility contrasted sharply with the tumult I had just left behind. For the first time since this ordeal began, I took a deep breath truly, genuinely breathed. And then I retrieved my phone. By dawn the following day, the divorce proceedings were underway. I gave Emily no opportunity to plead, dispute, or bargain. My attorney had top-tier contacts on speed dial, swiftly setting events into motion. Emily reacted adversely upon viewing the documentation, shouting at me, using every derogatory term imaginable, asserting that I was making the gravest error of my life. You're destroying everything we've built, she cried out, pacing the kitchen like a madwoman. I merely smiled, sipping my coffee. You destroyed it from the moment you allowed another man into our bed. That silenced her. In contrast, Nick faced greater troubles. Lauren devastated him. A financial audit uncovered his indiscretions. Apparently, he had been using their combined funds for Emily hotels, flights, and cash transfers. Lauren's lawyer dismantled him during mediation. She walked away with everything: the house, full custody, and monthly child support that would leave Nick financially drained. When the judge ruled in her favor, Lauren turned to Nick with a sugary, self-satisfied smile and said, "Tell Emily I said hello." Nick erupted in fury. Months passed following Lauren's courtroom departure, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Emily made feeble attempts to contact me via text messages, which I chose to ignore. I had no words left for her. As for Nick, he vanished, losing his major clients, forcing him to sell his office. The latest word was that he was fighting to keep his business afloat. Emily, on the other hand, seemed disinclined to stick with a financially struggling man. Months later, Lauren messaged me, revealing that Emily and Nick had parted ways. I chuckled not from amusement, but from the predictability of it all. She was responsible for his downfall. When things became difficult, she abandoned him just as she deserved. I rebuilt my life, starting from scratch, secured my own residence, focused on myself, and began to enjoy life again. For the first time in years, I felt content. Lauren and I maintained our connection. Not as some may suppose, there was no romantic undercurrent, no vengeful tryst. Instead, a common comprehension, a tale of warfare shared, a union forged in deceit. On a single evening, we imbibed, simply as companions. She lifted her glass, grinning. To liberty. I echoed the sentiment with a clink of my own. To retribution. Indeed, it was delightful.